Okay, folks, thank you for joining me. We're going to be waiting for our viewers to populate, and I'm going to come right up here for a minute, and what we're going to do is make sure that our sound is okay here. All right, so here we go. We did have some problems with some audio regarding Facebook Live. I think we're on Facebook Live now, so I'm going to wait a few minutes for people to join us. And if there are audio problems, please let us know. We're working on a shoestring here, but we're hoping that things just move along. So just stand by, bear with me, and we're going to get started shortly. We just want to make sure that our audio and our video is working, and then we'll be all set. I want to thank you for joining me this evening. We got a lot to talk about. Okay, folks, thank you for joining me this evening. I hope the audio is okay. We've had some problems with our audio, sometimes with video, but now I'm on Facebook here and I'm on YouTube here. And in about a week or so, hopefully we'll get everything worked out where we'll be able to, at the very least, get you to hear us. I know some of you have said you've been straining to hear us, and I certainly don't want to see that happen. All right, folks, I'm going to adjust the lighting right here. All right, here we go. How's that? Yeah, that's worse. All right, folks, my tech guy is not with us, so I think we'll keep it this way. Folks, a lot has been going on over this past week. And if you remember, I've been sharing for a few weeks that in the United States of America, because of the defunding efforts on the part of mayors and senators and governors all over the country, that we're going to be seeing more bloodshed in the streets of America by crime victims than we have ever seen before in the history of this country. Now, when I said that, people said, well, you know what, you're exaggerating. We don't believe that's going to happen. Why be a drama king, if you will? Well, folks, those of you who know me, I don't believe in drama. I don't believe in conspiracy. But what I do believe in is reality. I've been a police officer 38 years, retired as a detective lieutenant, served in the United States Navy for 25 years, retired as a commissioned officer, worked for the Office of Naval Intelligence. So I pretty much know what I'm talking about. And those of us in the police law enforcement service and in the United States military, we never lose contact with the people that we've worked with all those years, especially with U.S. military intelligence. We're able to have access to certain bits of information that normally would not be broadcasted over the mainstream media. No secrets, nothing like that. These are all open source bits of information, but we know where to look for it, whereas a lot of people wouldn't know where to look for it. But remember what I just said, because I'm going to prove something to you tonight that is going to be chilling. I'm going to prove to you that what I said about the bloodshed of crime victims flowing in the streets of America like never before in the history of this country, folks, it began this weekend. And I will prove that to you. Remember, when I come on every broadcast, I always say, when I say something, I back it up with facts. But let me share with you something that is going to be really, really chilling. It seems like this must be the chill theater, but I don't want to alarm you. I try to make people aware of what's going on. Education and knowledge is so very important. But you need to know what's going on with our country. Now, by the way, before I continue, people have actually emailed me and messaged me about my haircut. They said, look, you don't have a haircut. If you live in the United States of America, now that's outside the state of New Jersey. We're still lock and key here. The governor here has given us permission. Get a load of this. Giving us permission to exercise our constitutional rights. I can't wait for the lawsuits to come. You can't get a haircut in New Jersey, folks. Cannot get a haircut in New Jersey. I think tomorrow you might be able to get a haircut, but it's like going to a doctor's office. You go get a haircut, they got to take your temperature, you got to wear gloves, a mask. You know what? Sometimes I try to make light of things, and I was joking with someone that said, thank God they got the thermometers, not like the old days, because you know where that thermometer goes. But we got these new technological gadgets that they can put it on your head, and you know, they know what your temperature is. So if you live outside of New Jersey, you can get a haircut. You still live here, you don't get a haircut. But in New Jersey, you could protest. You could protest with liberals, progressives, socialists and communists. You can do that, folks. And I'll prove it. If you remember, just a few weeks ago, there were Republican conservatives that wanted to protest against Governor Phil Murphy's draconian regulations here in New Jersey. They were threatened and bullied with arrest. They were threatened and bullied with fines. That is an absolute fact. And guess who went out and marched with the protesters just last week? The governor of the state of New Jersey. Couldn't go to church, you couldn't pray, you couldn't worship, you couldn't even look at tulips. Remember I told you that story? People in New Jersey. There was a guy that opened this farm, figuring you're locked up. Come on out, take grandma, 99 years old, take her out and take her for a ride on the farms, roll your window down. You're in this big, big aluminum steel cube called an automobile. You got a mask on, you got gloves on. I've seen people with space helmets on, believe me. It gets that wacky. But anyway, everybody was obeying the rules and regulations with regard to social distancing. For the life of me, I don't know how you can become a danger to the public if you're in a car and the windows are up, but the way it is, I guess, in New Jersey. So anyway, so the word's out that people are going to Middlesex County or somewhere in South Jersey to look at these beautiful tulips and flowers and land after being locked up for 6 weeks. Well, I understand this guy got a visit from the police, and he was told, you open this farm, you're going to be fined. And anybody who comes here is going to be fined. And so, folks, that's the way it is in New Jersey. But all that will change shortly, and we'll get into that some other time. All right, so hold on to your seat. We're going to get an education, all of us. I got an education over what I figured out with some of the people that I know that are involved in police work and U.S. military intelligence. Hold on. If you have a seatbelt, put it on, because this is not going to be pleasant, because this is reality. First of all, folks, the chain of events that have occurred in our lifetime regarding what is happening to our country. Where I go now, people are asking me, what on earth is happening to our country? My cousin, I haven't seen him for a while, but a Vietnam War vet, he texted me and he said, what is happening to my country? Now I'm going to tell you, folks, what is happening to our country, to our beloved United States. And like I said, this isn't going to be pleasant. This is going to run a chill up and down your spine. But I don't do this to make you frightened or to make you angry, but I do this to give you knowledge so that maybe you will get a little angry and finally say enough is enough. All right. Socialism, I've said, is on the march. Socialism in the United States is on the march. I've said to you that the socialist agenda and those who support this socialist agenda have done what? They've marched to our educational institutions. They've marched to city halls. They've marched to get elected to every imaginable office, from school boards, trying to get into the White House, 1600 Pennsylvania. But here's where it began, and it didn't begin overnight, folks. It began in the 1960s. Step one, separate them from God. Make sure that they do not have the ability to worship. Like I said, you don't believe this? Talk to somebody from Venezuela, from the Soviet Union, from Cuba, from China. Talk to someone who lived and saw the destruction of their countries. It began, separate them from God. It's called atheism, folks. It's called atheism, a non-belief in a divine providence, a non-belief in God. So now what you do is they separate you from God, all right? So they got rid of the prayer in school. That progressed from the 60s to the 70s, even up till now, where the 10 Commandments, for example, that you used to see on city halls, gone. They were talking about, and they're talking about now, to remove the word God from the Pledge of Allegiance. That's back. Anything to do with God, socialist agenda. The social agenda is pushing that. So that's step one. Step two, and this is a sensitive one to a lot of people, but not to me. And it may not be sensitive to you when I explain to you what's going on here. You take them away from God, step one. Step two, take away their right to bear arms. The reason why the United States government has never been overthrown by a hostile force is that it is the government who fears the people. Why? Because the people of the United States, I'll tell you what, millions Millions of people are exercising their right to bear arms. When I was a juvenile officer here in the township of Nutley, I used to go into schools and I would teach classes about police-youth relations. And I asked a few classes, I'll never forget this, picture 30 kids in a classroom. How many of your parents own guns? How many have weapons in their homes? Now, why did I ask? I asked because I felt that I wanted to introduce a gun safety course to kids. But I thought, well, I'm just curious. Maybe I have 3, 4, or 5. Out of 30 kids in those classrooms, and there were many classrooms, a minimum, folks, a minimum of 25 kids raised their hands. 25 out of 30 of those families had weapons in their homes. Law-abiding people, hunters, or target practitioners, whatever you want to call them, people who exercise their right to bear arms. Now, think about this. I'm going to lead up to something a little later. Think about the reason why what I just shared with you, other governments have never been overthrown, is because people have, in this country, the right to bear arms. The government should be afraid of us, not us afraid of the government. So that was step 2. Step 3, take away their right to assembly. Now think about this. Those of us who are Republican conservatives, those of us who wanted to exercise our right to assembly in Michigan, in LA, in Seattle, in New Jersey, in New York, you know what I'm saying? I just named all blue states, all Democrat states. Those rights to assemble have been taken away. We could not assemble where we wanted and when we wanted because the Democrat socialist governors threatened to fine and jail people. And yet the liberals and the progressives and the socialists and the atheists have exercised their right to march. They've been marching all over the place. Folks, what did we hear last night or the night before last when the president had his rally? The mainstream media, boy, they are hysterical. Oh my God, there was no mask, there was no social distancing, on and on and on. Complete and total hysterics, folks. Why weren't they that hysterical when not the protesters, but the anarchists and the socialists were taking over cities like Seattle, firebombing buildings, firebombing police cars? Those people weren't wearing masks. They were not social distancing. Why did the media go hysterical over that? Because, folks, they have an agenda. The agenda is to take out this country, to take down this president. I just went through 3 steps. Let's review it. 1, separate them from God. 2, take their right to bear arms away. 3, their right to assembly away. Now let's go to 4th. Now listen to this one, folks. Listen to this one. This is scary. The 4th thing to do is start working on taking their right to vote away. What's happened, folks? At least for the first time that I know in my lifetime, what has happened? The right to vote is being edged away, folks. What do you think vote by mail is? What do you think this is all about? Vote by mail. I can't begin to tell you. Every day there's news reports of thousands and thousands of mail-in ballots that were sent to different people, that were phony, that were fakes, that were frauds. And just yesterday or the day before, we find out, and I think it was in New Jersey, where Democrats received, listen to this, folks, ballots for the primary of the Republican Party. Now, how does that happen? All these so-called checks and balances, guess who's running the show? The Democrats, the socialists. They're the ones running the show. They're the ones in power. So if you don't think, and I'm not, listen, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is not something made up. You start connecting the dots and you start scratching your head saying, look at the progression here. So now we're going to monkey around or do a little bit of alternative to make sure that maybe, just maybe, we're going to start to ebb away at their right to vote. I talked to someone, folks, just yesterday who said that in New Jersey, there's going to be some polls open for those who are disabled and those who are blind. Now, I don't get this, folks. A person in the polling place is to go into or with the person who's blind into this new voting booth or do something with this new machine. Don't you think a relative should do that? Don't you think someone who they could trust can do that? I wouldn't want to send anybody from a polling place into a separate room with somebody who's blind or disabled. You see, folks, a slow progression of taking our rights away, altering our right to vote. So there's your fourth one. How about the fifth one? And here's a big one, folks. Here is a big one. And it has to do with some of the things we're going to talk about tonight. You notice what's going on? They're beginning, the Democrat socialists in all these states are beginning to defund police. They're beginning to defund police. They're dismantling police. And I'm going to share with you tonight what I have here. Don't just think they want to defund and dismantle police because they want to save tax dollars. Don't just believe that they want to defund and dismantle police just because they want to boost social programs. There has been an effort across this country for many years to nationalize our police force. So you start chipping away at doing away with local police forces and you start building a national police force. Why do you want to build a national police force? Ask the rulers of Beijing, folks. Why do I mention Beijing? Because I could tell you, folks, that China, the Chinese Communist Party, is not sleeping. They're watching exactly what's going on in this country. And if you don't think that Antifa and some of these other groups are being financed or not being financed by the Chinese Communist Party, then you're blind. We had the same problem in the 60s and 70s and the 80s with the Soviet Union before they fell. And speaking of the Soviet Union, don't you think Vladimir Putin has been working on reestablishing the Soviet Empire? That is what's going on around us, folks. He is trying to reestablish and may successfully rebuild the Soviet Empire. But our problem right now is not Russia. Our problem is Beijing, the Chinese Communist Party, folks. They've been busy taking and stealing and robbing our intellectual property. They've been involved in all sorts of spying on this country, whether it be through the cyber attacks or what we call human intelligence, satellite electronic intelligence. But the one way you can do it is you send your agents into where? Send them into the states that are advancing a socialist agenda, finance these operations, send the anarchists in, and topple down these governments little by little. So that was number 5. Get rid of the cops. One central. Do you really want one central police force? I don't. I like the idea of local police forces. You got to decentralize and reduce government, not enlarge it and centralize it. Now the sixth one. The sixth and seventh goals, folks. This is where the end game is. The sixth and seventh step. Atheism becomes socialism. You replace capitalism with socialism. This is what our children are being taught in school systems all over the country. The virtues of Lenin, of Marx, and of Stalin. And you get rid of capitalism and you introduce socialism. And our children are being taught in colleges, not all of them, but a heck of a lot too many of them, that under a socialist government, it'll give you your health care, they the government, free education, free health care, free this, free that, free housing, everything is for free. I asked my wife about this. Why does Lieutenant Rogers always bring up his beautiful, wonderful wife? Because Lieutenant Rogers' beautiful, wonderful wife, as I said, and for those of you who are new to our broadcast, was not raised, folks, not raised under this beautiful symbol of liberty, of freedom. My wife was raised under a red flag with a hammer and a sickle, and the hammer came down and the sickle chopped their heads off. When they picked up a Bible and when they went to school under a socialist communist government, remember, it was the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, socialists right in the USSR name. They were taking care of their kids. They were giving them a free education. They were taking care of those who needed employment. Everybody got a job and everybody got free housing. But what they didn't tell you, and if you're a young person listening, is that when you went to school in the USSR and you go to school today in Beijing and throughout China and in Venezuela, you will take the subjects that we, the government, tell you to take. And if you don't measure up to our standards, you don't measure up to our GPA, you don't measure up to the Communist Party's GPA or standards of education, you're going to be thrown right out of your school. And guess where you're going? You're going to a camp somewhere. And you will work like slave labor for the rest of your life. That is what happens under a socialist government. Now, you want health care under a socialist government? Well, in the Soviet Union, in Venezuela, and in China, yeah, you can get free health care. It takes 6 to 7 months, maybe, to get a doctor. God help you to get medicine, or if you need surgery. That is how it works in a socialist government, folks. A socialist government that wants complete control over your life. And getting back to police forces, socialist government, socialist police forces, socialist government controlling those police forces, there are no constitutional rights. There is no right. There is no right to an attorney. There is no right to remain silent. You want to see what happens under a quasi-socialist government? I mean, Vladimir Putin says they're free out there. I find it hard to believe when you look at videos of what they do to protesters. It took one time for people to protest in Moscow Square about a year ago, one time. And when the government forces were unleashed on those protesters, there hasn't been a protest of that magnitude again, ever again. That's what happens under a socialist government. I never want to see that here. Look, I don't like maybe what a lot of these people are protesting about. In fact, half of them probably don't even know what they're protesting about, but I support their right to protest. I support their right to assembly. Even if I don't like it, they should be able to protest. I want to be able to protest. Let us never take anybody's right to protest, anybody's right to assemble away. This is America. This is why we have this flag. So we went through the 6th step, and then finally, step 7. It ends, folks. The socialist agenda ends. And you know what it ends with? A communist government. Atheism, socialism, and communism. We're going to give you these steps in writing in our next intelligence briefing coming out in July. Just email us. We got 10,000 going out. 10,000 of our intelligence briefing we're emailing to our viewers and to our listeners and to our followers. You're going to have this. That's it. Get it? Connect the dots, folks. See what's happening. Now, why is it happening? People are asking me, why is this happening to my country? It's happening because we are allowing it to happen. We the people, because we've elected people to office. And I'm not talking about the Democrat socialists now. The Democrat socialist progressives who, and I've called them out, who supported these people, like the unions, all right? The teachers union, the police unions, not all of them, but like the carpenters union and the iron workers, all the people that work so hard, and many of you are watching, and I'm not talking about the members, I'm talking about your leaders. You all went out there and you gave millions of dollars to who? Democrat socialists who are doing what? They're taking your jobs away. They're sending them overseas. They're taking your jobs away, folks. They're raising your taxes. They're giving you crumbs while your union leaders are getting some nice benefits. And I pointed it out a lot, and I'll point it out again, the New Jersey State PBA. I'm a state PBA member after I retired. I was a union president in New Jersey, a PBA local. People, they find that hard to believe. They find it hard to believe that Steve Rogers was a union president. Yeah, just like Ronald Reagan was in his time. Ronald Reagan woke up. He was union president of the Screen Actors Guild and found out and learned, wow, there's something wrong here, folks. Because the union biggies, those leaders, man, they're reaping a lot of benefits in Hollywood, but the membership's getting crucified. Well, guess what, folks? History's repeating itself. Not just the Hollywood actors were getting crucified, but now we're all getting crucified. Because the union leaders in this country, and I've called them out here in New Jersey, have decided to endorse, back, finance, and fund Democrat socialists. I tell you, I get mail like you do, and I just am astonished how, like in the 11th congressional district and other congressional districts here in New Jersey, local number this and that, iron workers this and that, carpenter, they endorsing Democrats, socialists that are taking their jobs away. So President Trump put America first, promised he would drain the swamp. I think he said the other night, what a swamp. Who would have believed the swamp was that big and all these swamp creatures were in there? We're still draining the swamp. It's going to take another 4 years to drain it. But the unions, the teachers, I talk to teachers. We got the best and brightest minds in the world here in the United States in the public education system. I believe in the voucher program. I believe in private education. I believe in school choice, but I also believe in public education. I am a product of public education. Best teachers in the world. But when I went to school, teachers were able to teach. Teachers were able to use their talents and their God-given skills to teach. And I think I came out pretty good. I was no bright guy, folks. Believe me, I was a C student all the way through college, a C student. Now, why do I mention that to you? Because young people who are listening, or those of you who are listening, you don't have to be the brightest bulb, all right, in the wall there. You just be somebody that works hard, you try your best, you believe in God, believe in yourself, and you'll become successful. Why? Because of this country. Why? Because there are teachers who cared for me, who cared for the C student kid. And that probably, and no doubt, I saw them cared for the D student, and even those who, I remember a public school teacher said, nobody fails. There's no, and I believe, and now I get it. We all do the best we could to our ability, but it was public school teachers that lifted us up in those days. But today, teachers can't teach. Every imaginable state mandate comes down. You're going to teach to the test. They're going to pass this test, and this is the test they're going to take, and that's what you're going to teach them to. That's why, folks, there is the answer to why our kids are not talking about American history. That's why the statues are coming down, the symbols are coming down, desecration of war memorials, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington. Look, everybody has a bad history. Everybody has a skeleton in their closet. Bad, bad, bad. Slavery was evil, it's bad. But that was in their time, but now we're talking about our time. And there's something else happened in their time. They fought England. They fought a British Empire. They fought a wicked king. And they founded the United States of America. But our kids aren't being told that, folks. Under a socialist agenda, they are being told the virtues of Marx, of Lenin, and of Stalin. So, folks, that's where we're headed, and that's what's going on. So before I get into what happened this week, and hold on to your seats. If you think what I just onto your seat. Remember what I said about bloodshed? I'm about to share with you bloodshed. But before I do, we're going to have a commercial break. Yep, folks, I'm going to show you something. All right. First here on YouTube, what these are, folks, and here on Facebook Live, okay? These are, folks, police officer and custom border protective officer survival kits. They're little small booklets that you can stick in your pocket. These we produced probably out in the 80s. And thousands we were able to give to the New York City police precincts. We were able to give to cops all over the country. All right. So now we've reproduced these. And you know what's in here? The book of Proverbs, some Psalms, words of comfort from the Bible for now, those on the front lines, our police officers, our Customs Border Patrol officers, state troopers, anybody in law enforcement. And with that, folks, they're going to get a little pamphlet called the Roman Road. And I don't know where that went. But anyway, it's a little pamphlet they get with that called the Roman Road. It's another pathway to getting close to God, to getting close with Christ, and to just building your spirit up and shedding light on all this darkness. Another thing, America's Homeland Warriors. That's one of the books we have produced, and now we have on our website. And this one here, Governing the Affairs of the People. Now, why do I share this with you? Well, we opened up our store. We do have an online store, easy to get there, rogersforamerica.store. RogersForAmerica.store. This is how we finance what we're doing, folks. And what are we doing? We're going on the air. We're spending a ton of money on a lot of the literature we're sending out. And we're not asking for donations. But if you buy a book, you buy some of these bits of material we have in our store, it helps finance our operations. Now, before I get on to the bloodshed, we are going to be going. This is why we finance our operations. We, our team, we are going to Florida, folks. We're going to be there August 3rd, 4th, and 5th. We're going to be speaking to GOP organizations, Naples, Florida, Palm Beach, Florida, and in September 16th, a huge event in Delray Beach, Florida. And I'll give you more information on that as we move forward. And like I said, we're going to be swinging. Actually, we're going to be going to Dallas, Texas after that. And then we're going to come back to New Jersey and do what? We're going to flip this state red. We're going to flip this state red. Before we do, I got a lot to say to my Republican friends, a lot to say. And you better start waking up. You better start waking up and doing what we elected you to do. And that was to have guts, to have courage, and to stand up and fight this socialist agenda. Okay, here is the results, folks. The results of defunding police. The results. The first results are coming in of the Democrats' socialist agenda in defunding police, dismantling police, and backing up exactly what I shared with you last week. Ready, folks? One man was killed and 11 people were wounded early Sunday morning. Yesterday, when gunfire erupted in a Minneapolis business district. 1 killed, 11 wounded. Shootings now erupting all over Minneapolis. Why? No cops. Now, the chief of police gets on there and says, oh, you dial 911, we're going to come. We're going to come. We're just going to come. Folks, I want to share something with you. How is it that the police chief, and I did mention this the other night, is on TV on one network talking about how the police are going to respond, we're not going to let you down. And there's a guy, an auto dealer, an auto store owner on another network saying, I dial 911 to do what? I have my businesses burning down. You know, the flames, they're coming up, his building's burning down behind them. But what I didn't mention was something else that was going on. They were holding a looter, a thief, or maybe even the guy or a gal, whoever it was that threw the Molotov cocktail to burn the building down. So here's a guy in Minneapolis, right? I believe it was Minneapolis, yeah. Just, you know, they're apprehending these criminals. They're dialing 911. They're getting a recording. And then finally, I think he said the 5th time, they said, look, not only are we not sending the police, but we can't even get the firemen there. Get a load of that, folks. Get a load of that. Seattle, all right? Start counting, folks. 1 killed, 11 wounded in Minneapolis. All this weekend, by the folks. Now, the great place, the great city of Seattle, folks, those individuals there have defunded the police. They're getting rid of the police department. The city of Seattle, as you all know, has been taken over by who? By anarchists, by socialists, and by individuals who just hate our country. Look, these people hijacked the peaceful protests that were being held by those who had, what I believe, had a legitimate reason to march and protest over what happened in Minneapolis to Mr. George Floyd. That man should be alive today, and those cops, bad, they should go to jail. We will never defend bad cops. And they were, for the most part, peaceful. But what happened was the anarchists, backed probably by the Chinese Communist Party and others, went out and started burning buildings. We all saw what happened. Well, here we go. So now they took over Seattle. As we went into this first week in Seattle, the anarchists had put up barriers, and then they brought in their own, like, armed guards. Imagine. Conservative Republicans, how dare you? You don't have the right to bear arms. We're going to take that away from you. But they said nothing about these people coming in. I mean, you see it on TV with weapons. Doing what? Guarding the people inside this area called shop. From who? From the police. I'm going to prove that to you. They were guarding these people from the police. So here what happens, folks. So now the city of Seattle decided to make a deal. They negotiated an agreement with these terrorists. You're terrorists, folks. Take down the temporary barriers and we will build concrete barriers for you. But they weren't concrete barriers. It's a wall. It is a wall. And it was supposed to be barriers to give the police and firemen a pathway to the area where these CHOP people, this new sovereign nation called CHOP in Seattle, to help people who got injured or who needed medical care. So they put the wall up. Guess what happened? That wall is up there. And what happens is this weekend, get this, there's a guy that gets shot and killed inside that area. Another one gets shot and wounded. He's bleeding to death. So the police respond. And the CHOP security guards told the police to go take a hike, leave. We don't want you here. And the police are saying, there's a man shot. There's a man shot, dead. There's another man bleeding. We don't want you here. And I'm watching this. I'm watching this on TV. I'm watching it on video. So what did the police do? They left. Folks, they left. The police left. A man died. He was shot. Another man's bleeding to death. And like my wife turned to me and said, how does the mayor of Seattle, the police chief of Seattle, how do they explain to this 19-year-old who was shot and killed and the other one bleeding to death that they died? I don't know if the second one died, but regardless, that they got shot and the police couldn't help them. Because the lunatics, the idiots in City Hall in Seattle allowed this to happen. The Seattle Police Department has released the body cam footage of officers responding to a fatal shooting in the CHOP protest zone early Saturday and being swarmed by what they called a violent crowd that prevented the police from reaching the scene. This crowd prevented the police. I've got news for you, folks. If Mayor Rudy Giuliani was mayor of that city, they would have not prevented the police from going to save a young person's life and to pick up the body of the one who was killed. It wouldn't have happened. It would not have happened. If any Republican wasn't conservative, was in charge of that city, there wouldn't be a CHOP. They'd be chopping the CHOP. But this is what the Democrat socialists have done. A man said he was threatened and briefly detained. Guys, detained by people inside the CHOP area while he was live streaming where they were. So here's a guy in the United States, well, no longer the United States, because now they've been declared as a sovereign area right inside the city of Seattle. He's detained. Unlawful imprisonment. All types of crimes are being committed there. I understand there's assaults. I don't know if there's any rapes. I haven't heard that yet. People being beaten, extortion. All this is going on right here in the United States, in a little section of Seattle called CHOP. And they're getting away with it. Seattle police officers, I guess the union president, Michael Solon, ripped Washington state public officials Monday after he said that they failed to take responsibility for the deadly shooting that took place there. So the cops, at least the unions, are speaking out, folks. The unions are speaking out. Hey, you live in New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Connecticut? Wait till you hear this one. What are you doing the 4th of July, folks? You ever want to go to New York and watch the fireworks? They're beautiful. Don't go to New York in a few weeks to watch the fireworks. This is what happened, folks, this weekend. An estimated 74 people in New York were wounded in 55 shootings from June 15th through Sunday night, through last night. 74 people wounded in 55 shootings just this past week. And it isn't going to end because the city of New York has disbanded, folks, have disbanded their plainclothes units. The city of New York has disbanded their plainclothes anti-crime units. What did I say last week? You're going to see blood flow in the streets of this country like you've never seen before. Why? Because the Democrat socialists have now taken over in these cities. This is their answer. This is their answer to the President of the United States when he offered to send them help. This is their answer to the minorities who are being shot and mugged and beaten and raped all over the place in cities that are controlled by the Democrat socialists. Don't believe me? Chicago, ring a bell. Los Angeles, 270% increase in crime. Seattle, people are getting shot and left to die in the streets. Boy, it is sad. It is sad. But this is what is happening. So what are we going to do, folks? What do we leave for our children and grandchildren? Do we leave them with this? Or do we leave them with a hammer and a sickle on a red flag? Hell will freeze over before I leave them with that red flag. Hell will freeze over before this comes down and the white flag of surrender goes up. Hell will freeze over. And I know you feel the same way. So when we go to Naples, Florida, and Palm Beach, Florida, and when we go to Delray Beach, Florida, and we go to Dallas, and we go to places in New York, and we start going across the state of New Jersey, and yeah, we go out to LA, we're raising the stars and stripes, and we're raising hell. That is exactly what we're going to do. Because deep, deep, deep in the hearts of the American people, whether you're a Democrat conservative, a Republican conservative, or an independent, whether you're black, you're white, you're Jewish, you're Christian, if you are an American patriot, you're going to rise up, you're going to raise hell, and you're going to fight for liberty and freedom. And we're going to fight against this socialist agenda. That, folks, is what we're doing with the Campaign for America. I went way over my time. We're supposed to leave these broadcasts to 30 minutes. Had a lot to get out. Please share this broadcast. Any problems with audio or video, please email us, let us know. We're trying to make corrections. So please think about going to rogersforamerica.store. Help us out a little bit. We don't want to raise money. I don't want to ask you to give us and get something and get nothing. You got to pay your taxes, pay your bills, do that first. But if you could buy some of these little kits, you know what? The police officers' survival kits, the Customs Border Patrol survival kits, you buy 10, 15, they're cheap. I think you get 5 for $7, something like that. Give them to the cops. Give it to them. Give it to our law enforcement officers and pray for them. That's it, folks. That's it. Send me your questions. Send me your suggestions. That's it until tomorrow. See you at 6:30 p.m. here on Facebook Live and YouTube Live. We're going to have a watch party about 8 o'clock, same broadcast. Invite your friends, your relatives. Thanks so much. Remember, pray for our country. God is still in the business of answering prayers. Pray for our president. Pray for our law enforcement officers. Pray for the victims of these atrocious crimes. My God, do we need help from above right now? Chief end of man, the purpose of our lives at the end of our walking this mile is to love and to glorify God forever. Thank you. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. And God bless our president.